Closed captioning for tonight's program provided by Chaminade University. A warm mahalo to all students, past, present, and future. Shine on, Chaminade. Tonight's program is brought to you by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, empowering Hawaiians, strengthening Hawaii.
In November 2015, Hokulea landed in Cape Town, South Africa, marking what many believe to be her most ambitious voyage yet, as she crossed challenging and unfamiliar seas. Ke Kau Makali'i, a delegation of students from Kamehameha schools and Halau Ku'umana, was present to welcome Hokulea and her crew to shore. While there, these students represented Hawaii, one of the youngest cultures in the world, by engaging with one of the oldest. At Pinnacle Point, on Africa's southern coast, lie a series of caves that reveal an entry into humankind's past. Here, an international team of researchers would make an amazing discovery, one that would challenge prevailing theories around the evolution of modern human behavior.
Pinnacle Point is also known as the cradle of humanity. According to the archaeologists, it dates back to 160,000 years ago.
Over there, that's a piece of bone sitting in over there. Well, I'm Peter Nilsson. I have a PhD from the University of Cape Town. My involvement with Pinnacle Point has been from the very beginning, from when the sites were initially discovered by myself and Jonathan Kaplan in 1997, which speaks to the origins of us, right? The origins of Homo sapiens. We've had several seasons of excavation in this cave, which is known as 13B, Cave 13B, which is now known all over the world. The main finds that we've made here are evidence for early systematic use of marine resources from the coastline, so in other words, shellfish and so on. The second major find was the find of dozens of pieces of utilized ochre. And we know that ochre is not a subsistence material. It is used to make paints, to either symbol by decorating your body with color, or otherwise painting cave walls and so on. So I am making a direct link between this roadmap of our development between what we are today and what we were originally, how we treated the environment originally.
There, so many miles from home, the connection to our own Mo'olelo and Aina grew stronger.
For me, I could feel my kupuna, or my ancestors there in the grounds around me, really speaking to me, not verbally, but throughout the elements that were there. 13B is surrounded by the ocean, so as we were walking there, I could feel the ocean crashing upon the walls and the caves.
What was very special for me as well, and I could feel it from halfway down the staircase, was probably the warmest energy I've had coming here. Hearing the Hawaiian chant in respect and asking permission to enter this, one of the earliest homes that we have on the planet at the moment, was incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful.
Our people's relationship to its land is a unique one. Not only has our Aina sustained us for countless generations and provided us a place to live, it is home to the bones of our ancestors. It is our Kula Iwi. The love that we feel for our Kula Iwi drives us to express our Aloha Aina in diverse ways, be it through the arts, sustainability and stewardship, political activism, or any number of other actions. Over the next hour, we will travel across the Pai Aina, showcasing people who are actively caring for and protecting the land they call home. There are numerous examples of the inseparable relationship between Aina and Kānaka in today's society. And yet, when we take a look back through time, we can find just as many examples of the power of that pilina. Hawaii, Moku o Keawe, may be the youngest island in the Pai Aina, but is rich with the stories of our past. The year is 1881. For 9 months, eruptions have sent lava towards the quiet town of Hilo. The flow is entering stream channels and quickly picking up velocity, threatening all 8,000 inhabitants. The people of Hilo have done everything they can, building stone walls, digging moats, and even planning to blast dynamite in hopes of diverting the flow. As the lava creeps closer to town, Princess Ruth Ke'elikolani arrives in Hilo and sends her bookkeeper, Oliver Kawailaha Ole Stillman, to purchase red silk handkerchiefs and a bottle of brandy. She then begins her ascent to Kilauea to visit Pele. Ke'elikolani approaches the edge of the flow and throws the red silk handkerchiefs into the lava, chanting and communing with Pele. She then offers the bottle of brandy, which blazes into fire. Ke'elikolani and her companions spend the night nearby in tents, awaking the next morning to find that the flow has ceased and the town of Hilo has been spared. Because of her extremely high rank, Ke'elikolani alone had the mana to intercede and approach Pele in this way, protecting her people in a time of crisis. This moment was celebrated by the entire community and is still remembered today. Hawaii, Moku o Keawe, was home to one of our greatest ali'i, Kamehameha Ekahi. Kamehameha's time in Kohala largely influenced the course of his life and instilled in him a lifelong allegiance to his land. It lit an undying fire within him. No challenge was too great, no opponent insurmountable.
Now that Aina of Kohala, very, very special place. It has all the elements that help to make us feel more Hawaiian. It has all those elements that makes us not only identify, but helps us to be Hawaiian. And perhaps the most special of all was the mo'olelo of Kamehameha. And I go to the place where he was born, and I say, wow, this is where the legacy began. You know, this is where Kamehameha was born. This is where he was raised. This is what nurtured him physically, spiritually, is what gave him his life, his mana. And if you go to Kohala, the place names of Kohala, I learned from them, are all directly associated with Kamehameha. The biggest town in Kohala, Hawi, 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 commemorates the time when Naiole was taking Kamehameha as an infant from Kokoiki, 15, 20 miles to safety in Avini because Alapainui and his gang were going to nip the Valky in the bud. They were going to kill this baby. Kohala people said, no, you won't. And at Hawi, when they got there, the wet nurses were not there. There was no one to feed this infant child. So he started to cry. And his breath, his cry, ha, was a breath of hunger, vi. We know that place today as Hawi. You know, people look at Kamehameha as a warrior statesman. Very few people realize that when he was giving Kukahilimoku by his uncle, Kalani Opu'u, that made him high priest for the god Ku. And he was in charge of all the heiau dedicated to Ku. The first heiau he dedicated to Ku is in Hapu'u. It's called Hale o Kaili. His uncle, Kalani Opu'u, was dying. Kekaopio came up to Kohala, to Kapanaya Bay, to Kamehameha, and said, your uncle is dying. You know, your cousin Kivala'o is gonna divide their lands. We know you and he have been adversaries for a long time, so be prepared to go to war. The chiefs of Kona, Kohala, Hamakua are with you. Where do you think those discussions occurred? Where do you think he meditated to make that decision about going to prepare his campaign towards unifying and making the Kingdom of Hawaii? Where does all that occur? Right at Haliokaili, Hapu'u, Kohala. Back in the 60s, I was working here on Oahu when I began to hear the voices calling. I needed to save Wahaipana. I needed to save Mo'olelo. I needed to save those things that make Kohala very special. Many of us look at the legacy of Kamehameha, his story, and the fact that so much of his places are still there. They're not concrete. You don't walk through a lobby. You can go on the same stones and walk on the same path that he did. The remnants of his work is still there. I feel very humble. I feel like I'm on really sacred ground. Sometimes I cry. Many times. And I'm glad that, you know, my friends and I have the ability to save those places. And so my friends and I, over the past 7 years, have looked at all the Wahaipana and Kohala, especially along the coastlines where developers were looking at developing and using legacy lands from the state, open space land funds from the county, and the help of the public land trusts, from Hawaii Island Land Trust. We were able to save 360 acres or more so that those places will not be developed. They will be kept exactly as they are in conservation. Now we not only have the stories to tell, but we have the places preserved. So we can show the land, the story, just as if they were still there. And I don't know how many communities have done that.
The Ohana of Ni'ihau is a tight-knit community known for retaining certain precious traditions. One of these practices, the making of lei pupu, is completely reliant upon the health of Ni'ihau's coastline. Kupuna and Opio alike are involved in ensuring the well-being of their home, now and into the future.
Aloha me kako, na ohana, na malihini, na kamaain na kain. O no mama ane, kele kana hele, hanau ia wau ma Ni'ihau. A ke ia manawa e wau makaua i nei kei na hoi. So mahalo ke akua no ke ia la mai kai, me ke ia mu keiki malihini, e haia na i ke kei mo olero no ka pili kai o Ni'ihau. Me mahalo nui. When I was young, I was picking shells for my mom and my dad. So that's why I learned how to make lei. So when I make that lei, I fell in love with the lake that I'm making. I'm 79 years old, going to 80 years old, I'm still making lake. E ko mako makui ko kalani ke ho me ke ia ho nani a mahalo ne ia o e no na mea pau no ke ia la. Na une ho me ke me ia mako na mari na ke ia mo ke ki marihini o ke ia la. No re re ka hapi e tu ho me ki inu ia oe i o koi no manaroa ka hapi e tu. I o ke no kamakua a me ke keiki a me ka uhane e mo leru. Amen. Mahalo.
The northern coast of Kauai is well known for its many fisheries and long-time ohana lawai'a. While its remote location has slowed the degradation of resources, irresponsible fishing practices have steadily increased, inciting a groundswell of action from within the Ha'ena community to regain control of their fishery.
What Ha'ena means to me, it can be summed up in the name of this mountain that we're sitting right underneath. It's called Makana. And it's full of storied places. Everywhere you look, there's a place with a story behind it that belongs to our ancestors, that goes as far back as Pele and beyond. And I think our story of Tips is the continuing story of Ha'ena.
It's a big project to take care of. It's only easy to go catch the fish, but the work that comes before that is where a lot of people lack. To do the studies on the resources, you gotta know when they spawn, when to catch them, when not to catch them. It's not about stopping anybody to come fish over here in our place. It's to fish the Pono way, because that's how we were taught. You take what you need, and that's all.
The Ha'ena community has been working on our rules and regulations package for over 20 years. One of the biggest events that happened was actually the public hearing in Hanalei School. I can't think of one family from Ha'ena to Wainiha that wasn't represented. It's that tenacious spirit that is innate in this community.
We formed the Hui Makainana o Makana, and that enabled us to work formally with the state who owns this park. There's due process, which you gotta have public hearings, you gotta have private hearings, you gotta contact all stakeholders, which means everybody from anywhere in the United States who feels they have a stake here has a say. What we try to do is to get a rules package. They can come and fish, but they have to follow these certain rules of fishing in this way. What we did was we went to the legislature and had a law passed that said that the DLNR would sit with the community and develop a co-management plan. There was none before that. Because we were successful in getting the legislation passed, now there's many other communities that want to get the same kind of recognition as partners with the government agencies so that you can empower the community to take care of its own resources.
Without the Makainana or Makana Foundation, we wouldn't have get a chance to save our ocean. And I'm grateful for that. So our children can live the way I live, or better. Hopefully better. Hopefully better.
Perhaps nowhere else in Hawaii are the effects of overdevelopment more apparent than on Oahu. Like the delicate Ilima blossom, our ecosystems are extremely fragile, and even the slightest change has potential for drastic implications.
Here on this installation at our natural resource base yard, we've got one functional greenhouse that grows primarily endangered plants. There are probably around 30 different species here, some of which are only represented in the greenhouse and in reintroduction sites, but have gone extinct in the wild. Hawaii is a very isolated island state, which has had an onslaught of invasive species. Invasive species can impact our resources and our plants and animals because they lack a lot of the defenses that plants on the mainland have. So that's why 30% of our species are on the endangered species list. One of our most positive community relationships is with hula halau. They really understand how they should rotate their resource use, and they have personal connection to it, so they feel a sense of place associated with where they're taking their ferns and ohia. So one of the species that we protect, it's a pamakani or Stenagini kanehoana. It's one of our mintless mints, which is just an example of how our plants have lost their natural defenses. So our native plants have lost that defense. It also has one of those flowers with the long curved petals that fit perfectly for, say, an eewee's bill to pollinate. So some of the challenges we have with that plant are getting it to produce seed. And we've done that successfully and planted hundreds of plants back into the forest. And all these pieces, including the endangered species, are part of what makes Hawaii, Hawaii. We're inextricable from our environment as Hawaiians, so it's so critical for future generations to be able to also experience every piece of our native habitat and environment.
WCIT Architecture's current focus is the projects that mean the most and have the most influence in what is happening in our communities. Having a strong Hawaiian value is important to our success because it's our core mission. We have a philosophy that we call mo'o. And the mo'o talks about this idea of lineages over time. The first process in that is called mo'okuauhau. So we need to know where we're coming from, the history and culture of an area. We move then to the second phase that we call mo'olelo, where we're then going out and gathering the stories of the place and the people. The third part of the journey we call mo'oka'i, so like huaka'i, but mo'oka'i, where we physically start to arrange the journey, the path of travel through a development or the path of travel through a building. And then the final stage we call mo'ovaivai, or where the values are brought. So when we're done, what practices and values still remain, and how can we make sure that those are intrinsically put into the project moving forward? It's important that when we're working in Waikiki that we understand that there's a difference between Halomoa and Koluokau. Even though that they're right next together, and you call the area in general Waikiki, that there's a difference, and the stories that are told there are different, and the people that have existed there over time are different. So it's important, I guess, first off, that we understand the place and the stories are authentic. Solomon Enos is an amazing man. He's an amazing artist. The piece behind us is the Battle of Narratives. Essentially, it's his interpretation of the history of Hawaii and how narratives and stories change over time depending on whose perspective is sharing that story. Much of what we do thinks in that Mauka Tumakai Ahupua'a vision, right? That what happens is all part of this interworking element of nature and man, Aina and Kanaka coming together in balance. So the fact that he wanted to illustrate his Maka'aina na here was really something that we embraced.
Today, many in our community are moved to articulate Aloha Aina in exciting forms and mediums. Hawaiian artists are extending the narratives of our ancestors through new prisms of expression. They are inspired by their environment and motivated by love for their kulaiwi. Traditional food systems were highly developed and localized, shaped in response to the unique characteristics of each island and district. In contrast, Today we import an estimated 90% of our food. Food sovereignty and sustainability is seemingly impossible when viewed as an individual effort, but when tackled as a community, the rewards are boundless. On Lanai, efforts to restore ecological and cultural health to Maunalei Valley are well underway.
So Maunalei Gulch is a unique place on Lanai, being a drier island in the rain shadow of Maui, West Maui Mountains and Haleakala, so we get a lot less rain than the other islands. Here, this was the only perennial year-round stream that flowed from the mountain all the way down to the shore. So it was a unique place that was able to sustain a lot of life. In an estimated population in ancient times of about 6,000 residents, about 1,000 were living just in Maunalei alone. So it was definitely a rich land. By the time of the Western contact and then the goats, the sheep, the cattle coming, really eating the native vegetation down, and with that, soil was loose and it started eroding, and there was actually landslides. So by about 1921, when James Dole purchased the majority of the island, no one was living in the valley.
So our division is tasked with caring for the culturally significant sites on this island. Our goal is to rejuvenate those lo'i and bring back the kalo so that we can sustain our island, we can sustain our kupuna, and we can make poi and feed our community.
Here you can see a couple different small lo'i that we have. We're in planning stages to expand areas, getting nutrients back into the soil, and then creating larger lo'i that we can produce more from.
I think building a sustainable food source, bringing back the lo'i kalo, restoring the fish pond, that's important because it'll give our community, empower our community to feed themselves. And that's really the goal, back to the land, back to sustainability.
When you experience firsthand, say you pull weeds and then you open up an area, you plant inside, and then actually being able to eat from that, sustain yourself, that is the full connection. And that's the idea. You take care of the land, you're actually taking care of yourself.
On the island of Molokai, a family has blended traditional and contemporary practices to help feed its community.
Our company, the Haleki Aloha, is about the traditional foods that we have become responsible for. So uala, ulu, kalo, fish, limu. If we don't demand of these foods, it will be lost, and the traditions of the foods and what it brings, what it gives our people, our business. In our capacity, we stay very focused on Aina food, and we try our best to support our local farmers, hunters, fishermen, because then it gives a demand for it, and then it's a sustainability, not for me as a business, but more as people. We take care of each other. It makes the food better, I think. You cannot take away the culture from the food. You cannot, that's impossible. But if you gave me star fruit and papaya and banana from the farmer down the road, I have better connection to where that came from. If you put uala on my plate and kalo, I have a better connection to that. Anything coming out of a can, I have no connection. The kids, how are we gonna, what's the future if we don't serve the kids aipono? School lunch programs is amazing. Every day my families get up early, get to the kitchen. We gotta make school lunches today. I do 120 at the most on a daily basis, but that 120 gonna make a difference for 120 kids and 120 families. What gets me excited every day is what I get from the kids that receive the school lunches from us. They feel good. They know what the food is. It's not strange to them. And it doesn't come out of a can. And it's a ripple effect because we're going to buy it from the farmer. The farmer's kids go to the same school. They're going to be like, wow, the bananas came from our farm today. The biggest winner is the child because pride, and they're going to like being a farmer because everybody know where the food came from. Well, Molokai is Molokai, and we are privileged to be here on Molokai, to be able to be in the space that we are responsible for at the moment. Again, the Kuleana, if we don't take care of our land, who can take care of us? Yeah, so we gotta give back. We gotta be pono with everything that we do, every step we take. In your capacity of what you get and you can do, you gotta make a difference because you're not given the talent for nothing. You have to do something with it. It's called Kuleana.
Water is arguably our most valuable resource. It is no wonder that so many battles, historical and present day, have been waged over control of and access to water. Contentious water rights issues surrounding Navai'eha have been ongoing for generations. Many Maui natives are taking a stand against the misappropriation of this public resource and are fighting to restore stream flow, in hopes of returning life and productivity to their lands.
So Navai'eha, which encompasses the ahupu of Waikapu, Wailuku, Wai'ehu, and Waihe'e, prior to Western contact, was the largest contiguous kalo growing region in all of Hawaii. I think it would be safe to say that Navai'eha likely had upwards of 8,000 taro patches in cultivation at the time of the Mahele. Now, kind of jumping forward, it's of no surprise that when the sugar companies were established, Navai'eha, again, was that focal point. And so really in a short period of time, you saw the diminishing of our streams in Navai'eha. And we have Hawaiian language newspapers as early as the 1860s, basically saying that their taro patches were dried up. And by 2004, when we started to restore our lo'i here, there were just, I think, no more than 5 taro patches in all of Waikapu that were in cultivation.
In Hawaii, ola i ka wai, water is life. During pre-contact times, through the kingdom, and even currently under our regulatory framework, water is a public trust resource, which means that it belongs to everyone, that no one individual can own it, and instead that resource is managed a mau loa for present and future generations. For many years, water was simply taken for private profit. Sugar companies came in, bought up Kuleana, and constructed massive ditch systems. Now, these former sugar plantations have spun off limited liability corporations, and these businesses are now marketing water for private profit. And this isn't something that's just happening in Navai'eha or even just happening in Hawaii. It's a global issue that many communities are struggling with.
I think for our ohana, it started with, planting that first huli and reconnecting with Haloa, and realizing that symbiotic relationship that Kawai'a Kane has with Haloa. You can't grow kalo without water. And so we started questioning, well, how much water is actually in our stream? And then we find out that it's only a couple 100,000 gallons, and that 96% of the Waikapu stream was diverted, and what we were seeing at that time in 2004 was only 4%. So when Huio Navai'eha was established, really the sole purpose was in survivability of our native and aquatic species, like our hihiwai, opai, and opu, the recharging of our aquifers, and the protection of our nearshore fisheries and wetlands. I felt like it wasn't really a choice. It kind of chose me, as a Kanaka, I know that I'm spiritually connected to Haloa, but I think when our community rallied around not just the water rights case, but rallied around the movement and the restoration of our aina, it was then that I realized that I'm doing this for the greater good of our community.
the water of life.
The bombing of Kaho'olawe irreparably damaged all life on the island, from its flora and fauna to its water table. Intent on protecting what remains, a group of young Hawaiians took the matter into their own hands. In 1976, the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana was formed, helping to usher in a new era of political awareness and activism. Two of the Kaho'olawe Nine, George Helm and Kimo Mitchell, would ultimately give their lives to this cause. Today, various organizations and community members are coming together to create a holistic plan for continued preservation, restoration, and protection of Kaho'olawe. This plan will run through 2026, marking 50 years since the start of this movement.
So the Yola Kanaloa plan is our strategic plan that'll take us through 50 years of Kanaka activism on Kaho'olawe.
You know, how do we honor that 50 years after Walter, Emmett, George, Ian, that whole gang of 9 people who landed on Kaho'olawe, how do we remember that event, and what would they think 50 years later would happen on Kaho'olawe?
It's a plan for Kanaloa. Like, we're thinking, how would Kanaloa like to see his island, in what fashion this generation are moving forward.
The task is bigger than just one organization. And it, as we say, it takes lahui to do anything. And for us, we need partners. And all of us need to come together and should be concerned about Kaho'olawe. Kaho'olawe was set aside for the future Hawaiian government. Once there is a recognized sovereign government, this is the land base for it. So it's a responsibility of everyone in Hawaii to care about Kaho'olawe, because this is going to be the homeland for Hawaiians.
So our religious practice is the reason why we have access to Kaho'olawe. The Alaloa plan actually comes out of our makahiki practice on Kaho'olawe. So the Alaloa fits into the strategic plan by creating hana kupono, which is, tasks that have good outcomes. We do cultural and educational work while we're on the Alaloa.
And with that, we know that we're going to be able to kind of be gifted with some of that ancestral memory of what occurred, how to do it, and how to continue to do those practices.
And I think within 10 years, another goal that I would like to see, which fits, I think, beautifully within the plan, is somebody or maybe groups of people alternately spending time living on Kaho'olawe.
So one of the big things we're trying to do is become completely fossil fuel free. We have a big capital improvement project to build photovoltaic panels and small wind energy systems to provide all electricity on the island. So we would be first island completely fossil fuel free, as a demonstration for what is possible in Hawaii and how we can teach the rest of Hawaii how to live on very limited means. Because on Kaho'olawe, we need every single resource to survive out there. And it teaches us how to be self-sufficient and independent. We want to be able to have people experience that on Kaho'olawe, to learn about it, to internalize it, and go back to their communities so that they can also teach their community how to be island people once again.
In 2014, a movement erupted throughout Hawaii as people stood in opposition to the construction of a 30-meter telescope on the sacred mountain of Mauna Kea. These Aloha Aina protectors found solidarity across our islands as people rallied together for a common cause.
These Aloha Aina warriors took charge
occupied Mauna Kea to get our point across that Mauna Kea is sacred. They took our playbook from Kaho'olawe and executed it better than we did.
But it didn't stop there. With the help of social media, the message gained momentum outside of Hawaii and attracted massive support from around the world. It was no longer simply a Hawaiian issue, but a global one. Mauna Kea proved that the world is much smaller than we think. It reminded us that we have the power to create change.
I mean, back in the day, I think people associated aloha aina with kaho'olawe and, stopping things. And I think that that's a critical part of aloha aina too. But I think aloha aina also has to be building things and engaging. And we have to have the capacity within our community to do that.
Our dedication to our kulaiwi, our homeland, is not limited to these islands, but to the world that we all share. The Ma'alama Honua Worldwide Voyage has connected every person on the planet by sharing aloha aina.
What's hugely significant is the ethos behind the sailing canoe, the mission of this worldwide voyage to not only bring awareness of nature and the importance of looking after it, but connecting with people working in various parts of the world in trying to change the way we treat the environment.
I think in many ways what's happened in Nawaiʻeha, and not just in Nawaiʻeha, but many other communities throughout our Pai'aina, where Kupa'aina are really standing up for their communities and resources who are working in lots of different capacities, whether it's in the lo'i or in the fish pond or in the courtroom, to help elevate these issues and to help bring them to the forefront. That's the core of Aloha Aina, and I think the key is really each and every person finding what they can contribute to the movement and how they can contribute, whether that's in the classroom or in the lo'i.
What has been very, very touching for me is this incredible warmth, and I don't mean to sound funny here at all, this incredible warmth and openness and generosity and all of this stuff. And it's almost to me that even though the culture of Hawaii might be of the youngest that we have on the planet, they very definitely have kept alive part of this original design. This design of caring for not only each other, but caring for everything else in nature. And that, to me, is an incredibly clear and powerful indicator of how strongly we still retain within us this connection with nature, with Mother Nature, which for most of us on this planet today is no longer there. We've lost that connection. The Hokulea coming to us here at exactly the opposite place on the planet and making the connection, I think is incredibly powerful. And for me, the most powerful of that experience has been me seeing the life of the original design of those very early people still thriving in your blood.
It all starts in your neighborhood. By caring for your land, ocean, people, and community, you are fulfilling your kuleana to your own kulaiwi, and ultimately, island Earth.